Hey everyone, this is Dan Davis. I'm the Education Manager with the American Battlefield Trust, and I am here on the Bluff battlefield near Leesburg, Virginia. It's the 160th anniversary. We're going to be talking a lot about the battle today. We're also going to be talking about the events that the Friends Group, one of our major partners with the American Battlefield Trust, is going to be holding later on this week. If you're in the area, you can make it out. Come out here to Bluff this Saturday, October the 23rd. Now, Bluff is what could be considered to be a minor battle. We think of First Manassas beginning the war here in Virginia in July of 1861. And then we skip to the 7 Days battles, the Peninsula Campaign the following spring. But sandwiched in between is this sharp fight that takes place in October of 1861, and it has major ramifications, major political consequences for how the United States is going to prosecute the war against the Confederacy going forward. And to talk a little bit about the background and the lead up to this battle, I'm going to bring in our good friend Jim Anderson. He's with the Friends of Bluff. I'm going to turn it over to Jim. Jim, come on up here and give us the background of this engagement.
Okay, Dan, thanks very much. Thanks everybody. We're really glad to have you here. I'm one of the tour guides. We're all volunteers that do tour guiding here on the battlefield. And to give you a little bit of background, first of all, I think the best tour guides are the best historians, and historians are storytellers. And that's what we like to do here, is tell this story. And we like to do it on the battlefield because it's so much more important to connect with what happened here and the people who fought here by being on the actual ground, walking the ground and hearing the stories. And that's what we try to do with the Friends of Bluff. To give you a little bit of background, as Dan was saying, this battle was very small in terms of its size, in terms of casualties and troops engaged. It would have been little more than a skirmish 3 years later in the war. But at this time, it's a very different situation, and that's, I think, primarily for three reasons. One is because of the timing. It's very early in the war. It's within a few months of Lincoln actually being sworn in as President of the United States. And it's a time when the atmosphere in Washington is dark, I like to say, very dark, and because they don't know what's going to happen. There's already been one battle, the First Battle of Bull Run or Manassas, also very close to here. If you think back to the end of the Buchanan administration, actually four of Buchanan's members of his administration would later go on to serve in the Confederate government or as Confederate officers or both, including the Vice President, John Breckinridge. And so there's still this concern in Washington of how many other Confederate sympathizers are there in the government or in Washington, and what influence can they have. So timing is very important. It's also important for another reason, and that is the inexperience of the troops here. Nobody on the federal side who fought here had combat experience of any significance, and certainly not in the Civil War. These are all green troops. Very much so on the Confederate side, although the Confederate units that fought here had also been at the first battle at Bull Run, which had been exactly 3 months earlier, 21st of July. Now we're on the 21st of October. However, even then, there's relative inexperience in terms of moving troops and understanding how to organize and lead troops in battle, when in a Civil War battle you have all this smoke, all this noise, and all this confusion. All those are going to play roles that we'll hear more about later on. So it's about timing. It's also about location. We're talking about just across the Potomac River and north of Washington, D.C., of course, the Potomac being the international boundary between the United States and the Confederate States for 4 years. So it's right on the doorstep of the nation's capital. There were embedded reporters with the Union, particularly with the 15th Massachusetts. There was a New York Times reporter, Elias Smith, who would be filing reports about this battle that would appear in the paper the very next day, thanks to technology like the printing press and the telegraph. And so because it's a Union defeat, a second major Union defeat, and it's on the outskirts of Washington, it's going to have huge impact. And that's the third reason I think that this battle is important. So it's about timing, it's about location, and it's about impact. primarily political impact, as Dan made allusions to earlier. It's going to result in the formation of the Committee on the Conduct of the War. It's a joint committee formed by Congress only about a month after this battle, and primarily led by what we call radical Republicans at that time. And the purpose of the committee is to investigate what has gone wrong with those defeats early on in the Union Army. The other reason for the formation of the Committee on the Conduct of the War, of course, is the death here on the battlefield of Senator Edward Baker. Baker, the only sitting senator ever to be killed in battle, and it happened here at Ball's Bluff. Baker's death as a senator would have been enough, but it became even more impactful because he's a very close friend of the president, Abraham Lincoln. As a matter of fact, Lincoln named one of his sons Edward Baker Lincoln. So you've got this impact. You've got the mood in Washington. You've got the death of Senator Baker, and you've got yet another Union defeat. It will result in the looking for somebody to blame, if you want to think about it that way. Who is responsible for what happened here? Now, initially, the after-action reports by Charles Stone, who is the commander here on the scene, or at least the theater commander, and General McClellan, the overall commander, his boss, both of them in their after-action reports pointed to Senator Colonel Baker, who was in command on the battlefield in the afternoon. However, he is now a martyr and a close friend of the president. And the members of the Joint Committee of the Conduct of the War are looking for a scapegoat, and they're looking for somebody else. McClellan and Stone realize it's going to be one of them, and it turns out to be Stone. And so the result will be that Stone will testify before the committee 3 times in December and January, December of 1861, January of 1862. And then in February of 1862, he will be secretly arrested at night and taken by train to New York City. He had to pay for his own train ticket, actually. He's imprisoned in Fort Lafayette and held there for 6 months, never charged, before he is eventually released. He does continue in the Army for a while, but his military career is primarily over. This looking for scapegoats through the Joint Committee on the Conduct of the War will continue for the entire 4 years of the Civil War, and it will cause any Union general who's going to be in command of an army to think twice about what's going to happen, because he's got to consider the Confederate enemy, but he's also got to consider the possibility, the real potential that he may wind up testifying before this joint committee. So that's some of the background. One other thing I'd like to mention that we try to do here as tour guides and teachers is that we try to help people connect with their history. And one of the ways I like to do that is by showing them this picture. The guy you see here was my grandfather. This picture was taken in 1918 in Montgomery, Alabama, where my grandfather was in training in the United States Army, and he would eventually go to France, where he went over the top in the last offensive, the Argonne Offensive of the First World War. He is talking to a Confederate Civil War veteran. They are standing on the steps of the State House in Montgomery, Alabama, where President Jefferson Davis was sworn in as President of the Confederacy. So I knew my grandfather very well. He had a great influence on me. He was a history teacher himself. And my grandfather told me stories that he heard from a Civil War veteran. So I like to say, how long ago was it really? And we like to hope that that helps our visitors connect with what happened here.